Today, we're having a powerful conversation with Dr. Margaret Cochran, known as the Relationship Doctor on TikTok. She's spent over 25 years helping people with their mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. Today, we're discussing the much needed topic of breaking inherited patterns, the behaviors we swore we'd never repeat, but somehow find ourselves doing so anyway. You're going to learn how to identify them and finally release what no longer fits. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. Today we have our special guest here with us, Dr. Margaret Cochran. She's a transpersonal psychologist and licensed clinical social worker with over 25 years of experience. She helps people bridge mental, emotional, and spiritual growth in practical, compassionate ways. She's been featured on BBC, ABC, Fox, NBC, and the Huffington Post for her insights into how healing the self transforms the family. As the relationship doctor on TikTok, Dr. Margaret shares tools that help parents and partners move beyond survival mode, teaching how to quiet the inner critic, release guilt, and cultivate authentic connection at home. So, very excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'd just like to hear in the beginning a little bit about how you got into this space and why you're passionate about it.
Actually, my first graduate degree was in education, so I was a teacher.
Mhm.
And I realized as I was teaching that more and more people were needing things from me that were not about multiplication tables and how to spell. And that drew me to my next graduate degree, which drew me to my next I just collect them. I don't know what to say. I'm either confused or sadomasochistic. I'm not sure which it is. But the bottom line was that I kept looking more and more for ways to help people get beyond their stuckness.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different kinds of stuckness, aren't there? It can be about ourselves, about our personally, it can be about our career, about our kids. There are all kinds of ways that we can get stuck. But finding ways to get out of getting stuck opens the world in an amazing manner that often in our stuckness we can't even imagine.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I'm so excited to talk to you about today. So, more specifically, generational patterns and getting unstuck from those. So, why is this particular thing exciting to you? And what have you noticed as you've started to delve into that?
Okay, it's particularly exciting in a clinical sense to me because I see the damage it does. And I see how if you don't stop the dominoes from falling, they will continue to infect future generations. And that's a cruel thing. So it's exciting to me to be able to help people step out of that particular kind of stuckness and break the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you mind sharing those inherited patterns or those negative things that happen in your life that adversely affect yourself and future generations? What do you mean by that?
There are two pieces to it that I think are significant. One is there's a biological piece. We inherit predispositions toward our brains working in a certain way. And as a result of that, we can be more or less reactive. We can have a tendency toward mental illness. And those are all things that create patterns that are often destructive to ourselves and others. And then the second piece is the socialization piece, where what we're surrounded with, what we're exposed to, is what encourages us to either make those predispositions bigger or mitigate them and make them smaller.
Yeah.
So in my work, the trick is one, to get the diagnosis correct if one is needed, and two, to be able to help the person learn new ways of interacting with others that are more constructive and more loving to themselves and
Yeah,
everyone they encounter.
definitely. Do you work with clients right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, what are some of those typical patterns, especially that our audience is often parents in their middle ages, a wide range of kids that are middle school, elementary school, all of that, high school. What do you notice with that demographic that comes up as those patterns that are adversely affecting their lives where they feel like really stuck? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, here's one. Perhaps there was a pattern that your parents had
Mm.
that you didn't like. And maybe they used to scream at you or swear at you or something, things like that. And you swore, when I grow up and I become a parent, I'm never going to do that. I swear I'm never going to do that. And then one day your kid does something and out of your mouth comes the very thing you swore you'd never do. And you think to yourself, what's happening to me? Mirror on the wall, I am my parents after all. Why is this? What's going on? You got to remember that when you are exposed to something, a way of thinking or a way of feeling over a long period of time, you literally create grooves in your brain, neural pathways. Okay. And the deeper that groove, the more apt you are to use it. And guess what? Under stress, difficult situation with a kid, parent, which is stressful. Under stress, what do we fall back on? Our oldest learned behaviors. And what are our oldest learned behaviors? Those deeper grooves. So, although here you said, I'm never going to do that, back here you say, yeah, that's what we do. You just do that.
Yeah. With that in mind, I think about my mom, a wonderful woman in so many ways. And we often felt as kids like a burden. There's 7 siblings, a
Yeah.
lot of us. And now I have compassion for that woman that was trying to raise 7 children and by herself for a while. But growing up feeling like I was a burden, I said just that. You know what? I'm never going to make my kids feel like they're a burden. I'm never going to make them be so busy and so preoccupied mentally that they feel like they can't ask me anything. And just like you said, I've caught myself in these patterns many times where I'm a little bit impatient or just this response that they don't feel like they can always approach me because I get in that same mindset set of my mom. So, like listeners, are probably like, what do I do with all these things? I try, I white knuckle it, I do it, and nothing seems to work. What would you say to them or to me?
Okay. I like to use the Mississippi technique. And when I was a school teacher, I used to teach kids how to spell that. Now I teach people how to use that in a different kind of way. Basically, a child does something. And of course, you have this initial deep seated response, reflexive, whatever your mom did in this case. But before you open your face in your head, say 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and then ask yourself, okay, what just happened? And then you will respond. Now, why is that so important? Because it's giving your prefrontal cortex time to catch up with your amygdala, which is your emotional center. And then you have the freedom and the power to respond the way you want to instead of the way you're programmed to.
Ooh, so simple, but very profound. So, what are we saying? That's more like 6 seconds, but it's that curiosity, that pause in between the 2 of them, right? Okay.
Another thing you can do in that pause period, if you do your first 3 Mississippis, which are silent in your head, you can ask your kiddo to repeat what they just said. Now, in many cases, they'll back down. But if they don't, you do some more Mississippis and then give your response. And I guarantee you will like your response so much better.
Yeah.
In fact, I teach kids how to do that for themselves in responding to social situations. And I've had kids say to me over the years, so you're doing Mississippi's right now, right? I say, yep, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'll let you know when I'm done, and then we can talk about this.
It's almost normalizing it, and it's okay if they know and you're just saying, "Hey, I need a little bit of time to maybe respond better than I have in the past," or do you share that, or you just keep it to yourself?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was a school teacher, there were days, because I work with children with special needs, and sometimes it could get overwhelming no matter what, right? They just do. God love them. They just demand a lot of us.
Mhm.
So sometimes when I was just overwhelmed, I had this little orange cone and I'd put it on my desk and I'd say, I'm in the cone zone right now.
Mhm.
Everyone leaves me alone. And it was only like a minute or 2, but the kids learned to respect the cone zone.
Yeah.
And there were a few times when kids would come up and say, can I have your cone? And they put it on their desk. I mean, they just had enough. So
Yeah.
they needed that space. So being able to have cues, external or internal. If you get really angry with your children, the best thing to do is take a grown-up timeout. Okay, I need a minute. If it's safe, don't leave, obviously, a
Right.
vulnerable toddler, but if it's safe, go, breathe, do your Mississippis, and then go back in again. It also gives the child a timeout.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we do timeout, we don't always do it well. And because of that, they feel punished. So
Yeah.
if you go take a timeout, it automatically gives them a timeout and there's no negative connotation to it.
I appreciate you speaking to that because I think it is very easy to send that message that they're bad, they're wrong. The more that I've been practicing this too, I need to take a minute. I need to put myself in a timeout, however you want to say it. And they see it as like a good thing and it models for them how to do it. So I appreciate you bringing that to light as well. Another question though, Margaret, is what about when people don't have that self-awareness? Like maybe your partner, your spouse recognizing like, oh, you're doing this just like your parents, but you don't want to hear it. Like for those of us that are like, no, that's not happening. I don't do it. I refuse to acknowledge it. What would you say to them, or maybe even just identifying what those patterns are that are affecting the family, but maybe they don't have the self-awareness to see?
The most powerful psychological trait you can have is insight, your ability to look back on yourself. And if you don't have the ability to look back on yourself, what you can do is look at the people that you're interacting with and how your behavior is affecting them. Now, the thing that can be troubling is that depending on how you were treated, what your socialization was, you may feel very defensive, very uncomfortable with yourself. And so the idea that maybe you did something incorrectly or you did something wrong can make you so uncomfortable that you will create a narrative about why it's really okay. Saying, for example, to your child, let's say you overreacted and you say to your child, I'm sorry that I yelled at you like that. But you are being, no, apologies do not have it's just simply, I am sorry I yelled at you like that was not okay. And I'm really sorry. Now, let's talk about what was going on and how we're going to fix it.
I love that. I am learning that much later in life. I've talked to this about this a lot before, but how many of us don't actually know a proper apology that's effective and helpful, especially to our partner or children. And yeah, I'm still practicing that one. So helpful, some of these things you're saying, that count to 3, doing that timeout correctly, almost even recognizing that defensiveness as a sign that, hey, maybe there's something amiss here. Maybe there's some generational patterns that are repeating. Okay, what about for those of us that we do see it, we do recognize those few things, and we're like, okay, that counting to 3 could help. But what if this feels like so beyond them? Like they see it really intensely in their grandparents and their own parents. They hate it in themselves and they're just feeling a little more stuck. What other thoughts or guidance do you have for us on what we can do, even if it's more long term?
Call me
Yeah.
or someone like myself, because whenever you're undergoing powerful change of any kind, whether it's losing weight, changing a job, getting married, getting unmarried, any of those big things, they have a profound effect on how you see yourself, on your ability to problem solve. The other thing that's very significant about it is that often um, people around you have a lot of opinions about things. Oh, God save me from opinions. I cannot tell you the number of times people come to me with a serious problem. My mother-in-law said, my uncle said, to whatever school of psychology they graduated from, no, that is not good advice. In fact, it's probably antithetical to what you want to do.
Yeah.
So if you need to fix your car, don't go to your uncle and your mom, go to a mechanic. If you got something wrong with your teeth, don't go to your mother or uncle, go to a dentist. We go to school for a reason. Let us help you. We want to help you. And remember that living life is no different than anything else. It is mechanical behavioral process. And in any mechanical behavioral process, things can go wrong, or they get
Mhm.
stuck, or parts fall off, or you get a cavity in your tooth. You don't need to be ashamed, maybe brush more, but you don't need to be ashamed. You go get it fixed so that it doesn't affect in a negative way the rest of your health. So emotional stuff, behavioral stuff, it's no different. Go get help from an expert, a qualified expert, someone who really knows what they're talking about. And I have to say, dear listeners, it can be tough as a consumer. I know that. We all have licenses. Many of us have doctors in front of their name, like myself. I'm studied a long time, right? But we can still suck like a bucket of ticks. And the trick is to figure out, okay, who's giving me advice that's helpful and who's just giving me psychobabble. There are so many influencers out there who say, oh, yes, I'm an expert on this or that. They never studied it. Basically, what they do is steal other people's work and then parrot it back as their own. But they don't understand the underpinnings of it. And the trick is that when you're dealing with human behavior, you have to be able to pivot. My job is to be able to follow the person that I'm helping, not say, no, you have to fit into this box. My job is to follow them where they need to go. So getting some help and being proud of that, understanding, yeah, okay, I got a little cavity in my parenting. I'm going to go get that filled and I'm going to learn how to brush and floss better.
That's actually really helpful thinking about that, like, not focusing on the shame. This is simply a cavity I'm trying to fix. I see this gap, I see this space that needs help, and it's okay to get help. Like, you can manage that shame. So I really appreciate you speaking to that. What else, when you're thinking about your clientele, especially, like I said, those parents, what other things come up in parenting that really seem to adversely affect lives that would be helpful?
To your point a few moments ago, there's a difference between shame and remorse. So let's speak to that briefly. Remorse is when you feel you've made a mistake.
Mhm.
And when you feel you made a mistake, you identify it, you ask for forgiveness, you make amends, you move forward. Easy enough. But if you feel shame, then you feel you are a mistake. And
Yeah.
there's no coming back from that. So it makes it much tougher to heal if you're struggling with shame. And as a result of that, folks who are trapped in shame are often the ones who won't go get help because they think, what's the point? I am indelibly and irrevocably damaged, and there's no one who can help me. Oh, that just hurts my heart. But it's not true. It's a big fat lie. One of the biggest, fattest lies out there. You are not irrevocably damaged. There is always an answer. Now, I won't lie and say to you, yeah, every answer is easy. You just stand on one leg and hold your mouth just right, and everything's going to be fine. But as with any growth process, you break it down into steps. And again, whether you're doing self-help or whether you're working with a professional, such as myself, they help you break it down into doable steps so that you can accomplish whatever it is that's really important to you. But first thing, you have to identify the difference between shame and remorse. That's step one. That's huge. And there are, by the way, 5 rules of shame. You don't know what you know. You don't feel what you feel. To tell the truth is to betray. So you never do that. And rule number 5, my personal favorite, is you can't have a need someone else might not want to meet. So if you're living by those 5 rules, your life is hell, frankly. You can't see and feel anything reliably. You're not allowed to tell the truth about anything. And you're not allowed to have needs that you are afraid someone else might not want to meet. Not even that they said they don't want to, but you're afraid they don't want to. So you're basically paralyzed, living in a box. And when things come knocking on that box, you have no tools, no wherewithal, because you can't trust your judgment. You can't speak the truth, and you can't ask for help.
So it sounds like there's the different rules for shame that you said for a lot of people that have shame that might not even come in. Hopefully, some of those are coming in and working through those things. But the parents that do experience maybe that remorse, okay, there are these patterns in my life. I swore I wouldn't repeat, and here I am. Like you mentioned, anger. Um, do you notice other ones like maybe escapism or negative coping, or what pops up that is a pattern that maybe some of us aren't aware of that we'd like to work on?
The big one is avoidance. When you grew up, if you grew up in a family that, and all families, of course, are on a continuum. So you have severe dysfunction on one end and mild dysfunction on the other. All families have things, right? But if you grow up somewhere north of mild, the rule is if someone does something egregious, there are no mechanisms in a toxic family to repair anything because of the rules of shame. You can't see or feel, you can't talk about anything. So there are no mechanisms for repair. So what you do is when someone does something horrible and egregious, you just pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
except the wound is there and you end up with death by 1,000 cuts. Now, here's a really important rule to remember. You can't clean the kitchen if you won't see the dirt.
Love that.
Okay, you got to be able to do that and go in there and say, yeah, this is what's happening right here. But if I'm not in a shame place, see, that this is where shame comes in. If I look at the dirt and I'm in shame, I'm going to avoid. But if I look at the dirt and I'm in a place of remorse, I say, wow, that's dirt. I need to get out the Hoover and take care of that, right?
Yeah.
Maybe scrub the floors a little bit, whatever I need to do. And it is an incredibly powerfully positive message for your children to show them you can screw up, you can forgiveness, you can make amends, and you can move on.
I'm learning that also later in parenting. I feel like more and more of these lessons are front and center as you have especially older kids that are very willing to point these things out, whereas younger kids are a little bit more oblivious. I really appreciate that modeling that is I gotta say that again, I love it. You can't clean the kitchen, you can't see the dirt.
Yeah, you have to see the dirt to clean the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly, and just focusing on that, if you think of it from that lens, we all have things that we want to clean up, that we want to improve for our families. Just if we could go back and improve our childhood, we would very much want certain things changed and improved. And we're doing the same things. Like we're not going to nail it every time, even though we remember wanting that change for ourselves as children. That was a powerful start to our conversation with Dr. Margaret Cochran. If you're listening and realizing that there are patterns that you're ready to release, you are not alone. This work is brave and it's worth it. If you want more support as you heal and grow, make sure you're on our email list so you don't miss new resources, workshops, and podcast updates. You can also explore our courses on starting your own podcast and building an online business with purpose, as well as tools to improve your personal and family life. Reach out to us at fulfillmenttherapy.org to get some hand-on experiences on how you can do this yourself. You'll find everything there from email signups, programs, internship information, social media links, all of that on fulfillmenttherapy.org. So check it out there. We'll see you back here for part 2 coming up.